Good morning. Thank you all for attending today's webinar. And my name is David Millington. I'll be your host. I'm the Director of Education for Next Level Purchasing Association. And our webinar is, the topic today is Best Cost Reduction and Performance Management Strategies. For those of you who have attended looking for cost reduction beyond price, which is very closely aligned to this webinar, then you may want to consider this a part 2. And we're going to be going into some unique methodologies and tools in this webinar. And for those of you who weren't able to attend the webinar looking for a cost reduction beyond price, you may want to request that we send you that webinar, or you could go to our YouTube channel and you could find that a video of that webinar. So again, thank you, and it's a very, very interesting topic today, and we're going to be going into some very advanced tools. And if you all at some point request additional coverage of those tools, just let us know, and we could dedicate some separate webinars for those tools. We're going to touch on quality function deployment. It's a very, very advanced and sophisticated methodology, and that topic alone, I could do a few webinars on that. So the scope of the webinar today would be to learn to leverage the total cost to serve. I know many of us in the procurement space, we're trained on and we understand extensively the total cost of ownership, but this is the total cost to serve, which has its peculiar dynamics. And we will be looking at understanding how to leverage effective product development mechanisms to yield cost reduction. And on the performance management strategy side, we'll examine some balanced scorecard methodologies. And as a very pertinent or relevant topic or concept relative to cost reduction and organizational cohesiveness is the understanding of value. And in many of my webinars, I touched on this point, and I think it's critical for us to always leverage value creation, value engineering as a critical point of reference. And value has 3 components. One is that there's a physical transformation or conversion from one stage to the next, where you have raw material inputs, they're converted into useful products and services. And all the associated activities are done right the first time, and customers are willing to pay for the resulting output or goods and services. So this would be a critical point of reference and strategic underpinning, and it should be a strategic underpinning for all of our activities in our value chains, our supply chains, and our procurement functions. So in terms of the cost reduction dynamics, we would be looking at areas and concepts in terms of rationalization of customers, rationalization of products, rationalization of supply chains. And the appropriate tool that we'll examine is the total cost to serve matrix. And then we'll be looking at products and services per se, and then we'll be examining the quality function deployment methodology. We'll be looking at product portfolio management, and we'll touch on value engineering a bit. And in terms of process, how could we leverage process, and how could we examine processes across the value chain? We'll be looking at the value stream mapping to see where the cost reduction opportunities lie. And on the people side, we'll be examining, we'll touch on NLPA certification and NLPA's PASS program, which is a skills assessment for success program. We'll examine that. For those of you who are not aware of that, we do have a tool for this. And in the last bucket, we see inputs or procured inputs, which the general procurement cost reduction tools. I'm going to go with the understanding that many of us, we're well versed in these methodologies, and these are the activities for most part that we conduct on a daily basis. So the emphasis are going to be on the people, process, products, and rationalization methodologies. So in terms of rationalization, it's a very good or best practice that on a regular basis that procurement function and supply chain leaders are part of our stock keeping unit or product rationalization. And this should be an ongoing process where products and services are examined for their degrees of complexity, they're examined for their profitability, they're examined for their degrees of contribution to market share and competitive advantage. And decisions are made whether to continue certain products in a product line or to discontinue or to re-engineer. So rationalization for making the case for cost reduction or cost reduction through rationalization, again, a very, very, very powerful and strategic methodology that procurement function and supply chain professionals should be a part of. And in terms of the supply chain rationalization, we look at the supply chain type and we ask, why are we make to stock? If you have make to stock methodology, why are we make to order and why are we engineer to order? Or why do we have, many organizations have a mixture of these methodologies? And the critical question and decision points could be around the percentage. Are we 50% make to stock, 30% make to order, 20% engineer to order? However that configuration is this the best methodology for your particular organization relative to the competitive factors that are in your particular landscape? And then I mentioned the product types. Why are we, and you ask the question and you make decisions around the further examination and analysis of those questions of why do we have or continue to have particular products in our product line, and why some products get preference in terms of resources over other products, and what are the mechanisms, what are the systems and that we leverage and we utilize to make those decisions? Or do we have a process of rationalization, or are we going year on year where we would continue to react to the market forces? And then the customer types. So rationalization could and should be done around customer types, and the traditional methodology of total cost to serve. You'll see a lot of times, you'll see underpinnings. If you do research, you'll see the underpinnings around the customer. But one could make a hybrid of looking at it through the customer dimension and also the supply chain type dimension. So again, in terms of rationalization and looking for the cost reduction opportunities, why are we serving, or why do we continue to serve or give preference to certain types of customers over others? Again, total cost to serve, and we're going to go into that matrix. NLPA, we have designed an extensive matrix that would expose and highlight some of these opportunities. So designing a total cost to serve matrix. Again, this would be very, very good and strategic methodology for us as procurement and supply chain professionals to leverage. So we would design this and see where we could unlock cost reduction opportunities. And when I say cost reduction, and we're not speaking of cutting corners, we actually referring to cost reduction while simultaneously improving quality levels and service levels. So we want to just make sure that we have that understanding. This does not mean that we're going to compromise quality, compliance, safety, the ecological dynamics that have to do with our sustainability issues or parameters that have to do with our products and services. In no form or fashion are we referring to compromising those. And I'll get into those issues. So the definition of total cost to serve is the identification of the cost of serving customers at the product and customer levels. And this was extrapolated from our supply executive leadership course. For those of you who are waiting for, patiently waiting for the SPSM4 to be completed, we have designed the supply executive leadership course. It's a very, very, very extensive piece of work on a master's level. And it has 38, it's based on 38 sub-competencies and 7 core competency areas. So that course would be available soon. We're getting ready to launch it. And I would advise you all here today to examine and consider looking at that course in particular. But the key objective of total cost to serve is for organizations to configure their systems, their total systems, to deliver the appropriate service levels to customers. Again, the appropriate service levels. And the underpinning of total cost to serve and is customer requirements. And I went deep into this on the prior webinar, Looking Beyond Price for Cost Reduction. And we started off with the underpinning being, of course, value and what value is, and the 3 dimensions of value. And then we went into customer requirements. What are the critical customer requirements, prioritize customer requirements. And we're going to touch on that in the quality function deployment matrix. But that's the underpinning. What customers require of us and the critical requirements and a prioritization of those critical requirements, because customers may require dozens of things from organizations, but a few of them are the critical ones, meaning that if there's a breakdown or if we compromise or we cut corners on those critical customer requirement dimensions, then it would yield an erroneous and a terrible customer experience. And then we understand the impact and the ramifications of such an action. So again, total cost to serve is one of the objectives is to enable organizations to configure their systems, their delivery mechanisms, their conversion mechanisms, their sourcing mechanisms, their contractual mechanisms to deliver the appropriate service level or degree of service for customers, and to determine the degree of value, customers and supply chains represent. So this is a very, very important point, and I'd just like us to stop and reflect on this for a minute. And I'll repeat it: to determine the degree of value customers and supply chains represent. So if we as leaders in our organizations, we we continue, and if we have a situation where there's a misappropriation of critical resources to supply chain types. You remember we mentioned make to stock, engineer to order, make to order, whatever the philosophy is. And then we have our customers. Not every customer is equal, right? So if we're in a situation where there's a misappropriation along the lines of resources to particular supply chains that we have in our total supply chain and customers in particular, then we could be compromising the more valuable customers. So in other words, the degree of value that customers represent and supply chains represent, we should have the appropriate resources, emphasis, and focus. Very, very important. Else we would be cutting corners in critical dimensions as it would pertain to certain customers in particular. And wherever there's an imbalance, a degree of not meeting customer requirements, that does translate into critical impacts and severe impacts on procurement functions and supply chain functions. And we could delve deeper into what I mean by that. So we have to take a strategic look, leveraging total cost to serve as from a strategic dimension, and to see where we could unlock or avoid or mitigate cost. So this here is the NLPA's total cost to serve matrix. And I recommend, and I highly recommend that you all build and leverage something like this. Again, this is tool number 18 in our supply executive leadership course. It's tool number 18. And when we say tools, we actually design the tools, so you would have the tools to take to your organizations and to use them in your day-to-day practice. So it's not just some things on a screen and then you have to go back to work and construct these things. So this is tool number 18, and this is a total cost to serve matrix. That's with the emphasis being supply chain types. Okay, and this is an example. So here we see we have supply chain type A, and then we have supply chain type B. Supply chain type A is a make to stock methodology, and then supply chain type B is a make to order. And again, many organizations have a mixture. Some of them may just have one supply chain type, and a lot of organizations would have a mixture of supply chain types. So again, we see in supply chain type A, and we have revenues of $600,000, and then those of you familiar with the supply chain operations reference model, and that's another methodology that I urge you all to pay attention to and do some research. It's called a SCORE model, and the model or the methodology is based on plan, source, make, deliver, and enable. So if you think about the supply chain, for us procurement professionals, we are in the source domain. And then after we source, the output of our efforts are procured inputs or raw materials that go to the make function or the conversion function. If you're in a manufacturing environment, then it'll be the manufacturing processes. If they're in the service environments, then they'll be in I would say configuration of service or configuration of inputs that you procured to create that service. So source, make, deliver, enable. The SCORE methodology, before sourcing, it has the plan function. So you have to plan to source, you have to plan you have a manufacturing plan, correct? So you have to plan to produce or plan to manufacture, you have the master production schedule, etc. And then you have to plan the logistics function, so the logistics planning, and then the planning of the enabling processes. So enabling processes would be the support functions, IT, marketing, finance, all those would be the enabling functions. So again, plan, source, make, deliver, enable. So this methodology, total cost to serve methodology, it has those dimensions taken into consideration. So you would see you have sales on top line, and then production labor, that's for making, right? And then, or manufacture, then you have the cost of raw materials, which would go into the manufacturing process. So labor plus materials would be your cost of goods sold. And then you have the margin, the gross margin. So then in terms of what does it cost to serve customers through these two supply chain methodologies, and why are we choosing one over the other? Which one of these is more profitable? And then if you were to put customer A, customer B, customer C, let's say your top 4% of customers, and let's say your organization has the top 4% customers or 10 customers, then you could put customer 1 through 10, and then you stratify the cost of serving them through these strategic buckets. So then you see the cost of planning, right? This is all your planned costs, cost of order processing, cost of sourcing, for those who are into sourcing, cost of delivery, the logistics function, cost of expedited order, again, that's part of the deliver or logistics function. Then there's returns. So if a particular supply chain or customer type, they give us a lot of returns. For example, we may have customers where there's a huge amount of sales that come from that particular customer, but however, that's customer, let's say customer A. At customer B, you have, let's say, half of the sales or 3/4 of the sales, but customer B has virtually 0 returns. Customer A has a humongous amount of returns and other costs. Customer A is the type of customer, the ordering patterns are last minute and erratic, right? And this drives, creates a whole chain reaction in the procurement function. Now we have this erratic last minute orders, and then we now have to rush through our procurement, the sourcing process to get materials delivered. There may be expedition cost on that from the procurement side. So again, in terms of procurement, procurement's contribution to the profit and loss, that has been diminished because now we have increasing costs to serve this particular customer, because we have last minute erratic procurement patterns from a particular customer, and this increases our spend, right? So it does impact the procurement function, and it impacts the entire supply chain, a customer of that type. So even though a particular customer may contribute more dollars than another customer, we have to look at okay, that's nice, but we have to look at what is the cost to serve those customers. And it could be, and many times from experience doing this exercise, we have seen where customers that we extrapolate less sales from, they're actually the more profitable customers to have. So this type of matrix would walk us through what it takes to serve customers through a particular supply chain or to serve particular customers. So we have the planned, and then if you look at the bottom of the matrix, you have the unplanned cost, which we call, for people who are lean management practitioners, which we call a hidden factory, right? The hidden factory, where a lot of these costs go untracked. So this, in many cases, if you were to quantify this, it constitutes a significant amount of cost and cost reduction opportunities. So leveraging the total cost to serve matrix, that unlocks several points of cost reduction opportunities. And if we were to quantify them into a one-page document like this, then we have, I recommend, and I mentioned before, that a good practice around cost reduction would be to formulate a commodity a commodity and category team, a strategic commodity and category team made up of people from different parts of your organization. Very important strategic move, because if us as procurement or supply chain professionals, we try to address or to reduce costs in certain dimensions that may be coming from other departments, we may get pushback. But if we form a team where we look at a matrix like this, and we have that collaboration, and we take the politics out of our activities, then this type of matrix would be a very, very good strategic tool for cost reduction. And this is all outside of cost of sourcing and the raw materials themselves, which us as procurement professionals, we laser and hyper focus. Many times we hyper focus in these dimensions. But if we look at in the planned cost category, we see cost of sourcing, right? What does it cost to execute your processes in terms of buyer time, et cetera, and then the cost of the materials, the raw materials. So in many cases, the procurement functions, they're locked into these dimensions, but look at all these other areas where there are cost reduction opportunities, and each one of these would impact in some form or fashion the procurement function. Each one of these, guaranteed, would impact the procurement function and would impact your spend. So again, constructing a matrix like this would be very, very good opportunity for realizing cost reduction opportunities. Now, to get the data for this, that is could be a challenge, and I'll address that in one of the other slides. So this tool is in competency area number 3 in the Supply Executive Leadership course. I believe I introduced this table in Microsoft Excel for purchasing professionals. We did an exercise where we did a bill of materials with a negotiation matrix, and we integrated this into the financial statements real time to look for cause and effect reaction. So that is also a good webinar to look at in conjunction with this one and the webinar on looking for cost reduction beyond price. It's Microsoft Excel for purchasing professionals, and I believe it was done about a month ago. So you might want to go to the website and look at that one. But in terms of, and I'm going to go back a minute, the hidden factor, the 8 wastes, I mentioned this a lot. And many times I mention them in isolation. Now, for those of you who are familiar with me, honing in on waste and waste categories, I hope the total cost to serve matrix and methodology puts that into perspective and makes it more valuable for you. So again, the unplanned cost, the downtime, which is an acronym, by the way, for defects, overproduction, waiting, neglect of human talent, transportation waste, unnecessary transportation and logistical movements inside of your 4 walls and the supply chain as a whole, excessive inventories, also excessive motion and over processing, excessive processing across all activities in the supply chain, including the administrative functions. All of these are categories for cost reduction, and again, would impact the procurement function. For example, excessive inventories could put the organization, depending on what type of industry they're in, to risk of expire, theft. There's a whole plethora of impacts that would also affect the procurement function, who would have to go through extra spend to replace and replenish those materials that are expired. Just one example. So this here is a table for, and I recommend that you all use this table to unlock what you call the hidden factory. So in terms of defects, you look at your processes and analyze your entire supply chain mechanism for cost of suppliers shipping defects to your organization. So you procured X amount of materials and there's a high defect rate. How does it affect your spend? How does it affect your cost of doing business with that particular supplier? And then what would be the cost impact to serve your customer who have suppliers who serve you in that way? So what is the cost? And you quantify the cost of producing of your production or your manufacturing or conversion processes generating defects, the cost of shipping defects to customers. So the further out that goes, the more impacted the cost is. So you went through the processes or the sourcing cost to receive inputs, then you converted them, so there's cost of that, and you can look at the total cost to serve matrix or your own total cost to serve matrix. So now you have value add, and then now the whole cost to ship to the customers. And guess what? You just ship defects. Now the customers say, oh, well, we want those products replaced. So now the procurement function has to replace the raw materials that went in that. So now our spend escalated. So we went in the reverse. We didn't reduce costs, we actually increased our cost. So again, quantifying those. And if you go through each one of these dimensions and examine and reflect on our supply chains and our operations in terms of how what we call that hidden factory, where a lot of these things, we call it the hidden factory because they're dimensions that are usually in most organizations, they're not quantified, they're not measured, and people, pay very little attention. Maybe in inventory and defects, there might be some emphasis there, but in terms of like waiting, neglect of human talent, excessive processing, motion, a lot of those dynamics are not quantified and measured. So this could be a very, very useful tool for you all to leverage strategically cost reduction opportunities from waste reduction. Some considerations, and as I mentioned this before, key considerations for leveraging the total cost to serve matrix. One would be, again, agree on the definitions of the categories you're collecting data on, which we call the operational definitions. Whatever those categories are, make sure everybody's in agreement that those categories are correct and you're correcting the right data. Again, doing this as a team, so you're leveraging your category and commodity team to come up with those agreements. This way, your data is not challenged. In tool number 12, in the supply executive course, tool number 12 goes into value analysis for product assembly and service processes. That is a good framework for a good place to extract a lot of the data that would underpin the hidden factory, that methodology. And that's going to be at another slide. And many of you might be familiar, displayed that slide in prior webinars. And if you're going to do this on the customer level and you have hundreds of customers, then simplify the process of doing a total cost to serve assessment by leveraging the 80-20 rules and the 450 rules. So the 80-20, what are the 20% of the customers that drive about 80% of your sales, right? So focus on those. And if that is still expansive, then the 450 rule is a derivative from that 80-20 rule, which suggests that 4% of your customers drive 50% of your sales. So I think that might be a good place to start, because you're dealing with very, very, very few variables, very, very few customer types, and you conduct the total cost to serve analysis there, and you would see where you may have to make decisions: serve or continue to serve, or continue to serve in a renegotiated dimension, meaning that if a customer that you have, yes, the sales are significant, but the costs that go against those sales are not lucrative, then in that case, you would have a lot of to negotiate, and in terms of price, renegotiating price points with that particular customer, service levels, terms, you name it. Everything could be, every touch point is fair game for negotiation. And the total cost to serve matrix would give you, allow you to provide them visibility on why you're struggling to serve them in the current contractual arrangement. So I just wanted to bring those key considerations. So again, the value analysis, again, value the underpinning of this whole exercise of how to create value for a particular supply chain or customer, to be able to have a system or mechanism for unlocking and understanding the methods or the processes of your value creation. It would make the data collection for the total cost to serve matrix a lot less formidable. And I'll display that for those who have not seen that chart before. Oh, here we are. So on this particular process, we have the process steps, and we have the steps that actually add value, meaning that there's a transformation from one stage to the next. The customer is willing to pay for it, and it's done right the first time. So what they call the value add steps, it quantifies that, and it also quantifies what you call the non-value added steps that are critical. You have to do it for compliance and operational issues. And then you have the steps that do not add value, or the categories of waste. You're able to capture the unnecessary motion and transportation, etc., in those from those steps. So this type of methodology to understand the cost of critical dimensions and how to extrapolate the data and how to matrix it, this could make the total cost to serve matrix a lot less formidable in terms of data collection. And however you do it, make sure you have an agreed upon data collection plan with your commodity team. And I think that's a critical start point for cost reduction initiatives, outside of focusing on raw materials and the sourcing function, because it is a cross-functional endeavor. So that was the rationalization part of the matrix that we had up front. And then we're going to go into products, and we're going to touch on quality function deployment, design for X, and we're going to touch on a little bit in value engineering. Design for X. In the total cost to serve matrix we had on the side, I don't know if you got a chance to look at it properly, we had design for X there. And you would design for logistics, so design for shipping, design for picking and packing operations, design products for ease of manufacture and assembly, design products for reliability, design products for ease of sourcing. Again, design for X for new products coming through your pipeline. We would I recommend you look at these and other critical design for X parameters. So this way we bring upfront a low-cost product, low-cost, high-quality product to market. And then the leverage of design for X for cost reduction is to examine our existing product and service line, and we look at them from these parameters. Are the designs easy to use? Is it designed for ease of shipping? Is it designed for ease of for picking and packing operations? Is it our products and services designed for ease of manufacturing and assembly? And then you make the decision points. Please examine, of course, the return on investments in these initiatives to re-engineer your product line to meet design for X requirements. So this could be a very, very powerful area for cost reduction opportunities as well. Quality function deployment, again, a very, very advanced tool, so I'm just going to touch on it briefly. If you all see a need or you will have a desire to learn more about this, then I could do a webinar, maybe a couple parts, and you could drill deep down into this and see how it could really help the procurement and supply chain functions. So quality function deployment is also known as the house of quality, and it's a methodology to translate prioritized customer requirements into the what's, how's, and if you want to go further, who's and when's. So again, we see translation of what prioritized customer requirements. So it's very important to understand what are the critical customer requirements. Again, those are the requirements that if our products and services do not deliver on a high level, that they would be, or the sufficient level, then there would be major customer dissatisfaction. So understanding what those few requirements, again, we focus on the critical few, and then in those critical few requirements, for some companies it's 3, 5, 7, 9 requirements, to prioritize them and to make sure that the procurement and supply chain functions are aligned, and to make sure that your suppliers, our suppliers, are aligned and capable of delivering on those requirements and enabling our organizations to deliver on those requirements. So again, that could be another area where you could bring cost in line, aligning your supplier selection processes to the critical customer requirements. And if you don't have such a methodology to examine, you may see some breaches where your suppliers fall short. And if they do, there's some costs could be hidden or could be in plain sight. But to have that degree of a lot of this stuff is based on mindset and of course know-how. So again, the prioritized customer requirements, very, very, very critical. And the QFD, quality function deployment methodology, it translates those requirements into the what's and the how's. And how is, what are those requirements and how are those going to be converted into useful products and services. Many of the forward-thinking and progressive companies leverage quality function deployment in some form or fashion. So it's a very, very powerful methodology. So this is what a house of quality matrix looks like. And this is in competency 2 in our supply executive leadership course. The course goes a little more in depth in this. I'm just going to go over some of these dimensions quickly. So we see and part of the matrix, we see the customer requirements, and in this case, this is for a soup manufacturer and retailer, and we see that their customer requirements are correct products, quality product or quality of product, warmness of service, the serve time, and assuring that the products are served at the right temperature, and then the cost. And then those requirements are ranked by degree of importance on the scale of 1 to 5. So we see correct product is, it has scored 5. So that's out of these critical requirements, it's at the top. Quality of product is at the top. Warmness of service. We see serve time is also a critical dimension, and then you see reduce. So we have to reduce serve time. If you reduce serve time, we reduce cost. And there's so many ways that that if for this particular process, that if that serve time is extensive, then there's so many ways that that would impact the procurement function, because then that would lead to customers leaving the line, and then that would lead to a lot of unsold product, which would have to be, in this case, destroyed. And so we would have had a high degree of spend to procure the raw material inputs for those soups, and then a lot of spend to convert them into soups, and then they go straight into the garbage. So, and so those are the what's, and then you have the design criteria, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 design criteria, and we look for the relationships between the design criteria and those criteria themselves. And we see that serve time is one of the most critical dimensions, and the target is 22 seconds. And for example, if you look at product, correct product, the customer, the target is 99%. And then we look at quality product, 99%. All right. And then we look at the serve time. Those are the targets, 22 seconds. And then this matrix also takes into account our competitors and where our competitors rank relative to your organization's performance. So it's a very, very, very robust tool that could be used for re-engineering existing products, or designing products up front, designing them right the first time, understanding the critical requirements from the production side, from the customer side, what do you call it, the competition is doing, where are we scoring relative to, and where do we need to be in terms of our competitors, if they have a certain degree of performance and then they're number one, do we really need to exceed that and incur that cost? That's important. Do we want to meet those requirements, or do we want to exceed those requirements where a competitor is in one of these areas has a degree of performance above us? And how much do we want to go above those requirements? Is it necessary? Do we want to incur that cost? So we can make those decisions. And I say this because I remember being on the field at one point in time. We had my company, we had worked in a bakery, and we had a new master chef, and he came in and he said his vision is to re-engineer everything and make it the best of the best. And that he did that without consulting, understanding what the customer requirements are, doing any type of benchmarking to see what's acceptable relative to the competition, what the competitors are doing, and he over-engineered many dimensions at a exorbitant cost, right? And then I came in and I was asked to help to re-engineer the products where they meet or exceed the requirements, but at the right cost structure. So in that case, I leveraged this quality function deployment and realized a tremendous amount of cost savings while keeping the being true to the quality requirements. So here is where we again, I mentioned we're not talking about reducing costs and cutting corners. So this quality function, quality matrix would help and assist in guarding that type of initiative. This here is the process for populating the quality function deployment methodology, or the house of quality matrix. And again, the voice of the customer, that is key. And this is my saying in red: poor product designs equal excessive procurement expenditure. That is so true. So again, we look at products, we look at existing products, we look at the designs, and guaranteed if in your organizations you don't have a methodology like that that scrutinizes your existing lineup of products and services, there are huge opportunities for cost reduction. Product portfolio management for cost reduction, and building the case of leveraging product portfolio management for cost reduction. Very, very powerful tool. And again, according to the PDMA, the Product Development and Management Association, you may want to go to their website, pdma.org, and look at their website and then see their offerings. A very, very, very great organization to be a part of. Product portfolio management, as defined by the PDMA, is a business process by which a business unit decides the mix of active products, and I'll stop there. The mix of active products. A decision-making process where businesses list active products to continually review them. And products, and I would like us to view products in this way: products equal goods plus services, and we will come back to that. The core purpose of product portfolio management is working on and launching the right products and services, or re-engineering and making sure we have the right products and services in queue or in production, and effectively managing that process. So here is what a product portfolio management matrix would look like, and the products from A to, I believe, A to K. And there are a few strategic buckets here: strategic fit, product attractiveness, market attractiveness, the ability of that product or service to leverage your organization's core competency, risk versus reward, low cost of development, and the degree of required intellectual property. Do you have that intellectual property in-house? Do you have to outsource it? Do you have to acquire it? Well, then what's the cost, etc.? And so you will examine your new products or existing products. You would evaluate them relative to these strategic buckets, on a rating of 1 to 5, and then you would rank your existing products or new products that you have in line, and you would make a determination based on the score of whether to put certain things on hold, that they're close to meeting the strategic requirements of realizing market share. If they're close but they're not quite there, depending on where they score, I recommend only products that score 90 and above. You should proceed. If you already have existing products, so you're doing this for an existing product line, then you continue. Then products that score under 90, it may or may not be disruptive to hold them to your supply chain, but you revalue, you earmark them for revaluation. And then products that score under 80 or so, then you should have a discussion around discontinuing that product line. If it's for new products, then products that score under 80, then those products are not launched. Going forward, you would avoid a lot of risk and a lot of cost. So again, this here product portfolio management matrix for new products is cost avoidance before you even start to realize cost, by killing certain products and ensuring that only products that score significantly and highly in these strategic buckets are allowed to be launched. So again, another powerful methodology that could be leveraged for new and existing products. Then the other bucket that we had for examining for cost reduction opportunities was the value stream, and this is one of my favorite tools. And we recommend lean practitioners, most of them recommend you do this exercise. A lot of times they do it using Post-its, and you could go at different levels to realize and to understand what your value stream looks like. Or you could pen and paper and you map out those processes, and you would realize from your value stream, if you analyze and assess cycle times and lead times, you will see huge opportunities for cost reduction. For example, in this particular value stream, you see where the customer calls the sales rep to place his or her order, and then it takes that sales rep 8 hours to generate a sales order, right? And then it takes the scheduler about 8 hours to act on that. Then the processes or the conversion processes are triggered to convert whatever raw materials into finished product. They're activated processes 1, 2, 3, 4. So you see right there where you have those where it says Kaizen and those bursts, those are opportunities. For example, between processes 2 and 3, and you'll see this a lot. If you map your value streams, you would see tremendous opportunities for cost reductions, my friends. So between processes 2 and 3, why does it take 4 days? Why are those products just sitting, waiting to go to the next process? And you'll see this a lot. And look at the time that it would take to actually execute, to manufacture 100 units. 7 minutes process 1, 4 minutes process 2, 3 minutes process 3, 5 minutes process 4, and look at how many days in between the process steps. Guaranteed. Now this, for some of us who are not used to looking at value stream mapping, this would be like, no way. But guaranteed, you go to your processes and you draw out a value stream map, and you would see where time is consumed and why do we have these long lead times, right? If you could collapse your lead times, then you would unlock costs. That's a huge opportunity for cost reduction. And the whole thing is, what are the drivers? What are the root causes of these areas in red, for example? and what are the root causes, and examining those root causes, and then putting in place effective solutions to reduce time and cost. But the value stream methodology, a very, very powerful methodology for unlocking cost reduction. And again, you would quantify, you do quantify the amount of dollars consumed by products sitting in between processes or in between steps. And then the second segment, I'm going to work briefly on this, would be the performance management strategies, and we're going to touch briefly on balanced scorecard methodology. Again, the supply chain operations reference model is based on plan, source, make, deliver, and return and enabling processes. I would recommend that you all capture the strategic supply chain metrics and ask yourselves the question, how does the procurement function impact these metrics? And this all cause, and the procurement function is a subset of the supply chain. So the capabilities or constraints of the procurement function would impact these metrics. So and it would impact the whole. So the procurement function could impact the whole supply chain. And other elements of the supply chain could impact the supply chain as well. And other elements of the supply chain, like the logistics function, the manufacturing function, suppliers, even customers, could impact the procurement function. It's all cause and effect. And to understand those relationships are very, very important, because the better we are at understanding those cause and effect relationships, we would also be better at identifying cost reduction opportunities as a result of cost and cause and effect dynamics. So the critical strategic measures, of course, the level 1 metrics, the level 1s, level 2s, level 3s, but the scope of this webinar, I'm going to focus on touch on level 1 metrics: responsiveness, reliability, agility, cost, and asset management and efficiency. The particular metrics are in the middle. For responsiveness, there's order fulfillment cycle time. So does the procurement function impact that? Absolutely. Absolutely. If customers require X amount of product from your organization, then the procurement function has to make sure that those raw material inputs are on hand. If they're not, or if they have a poor quality, or whatever the reason is, or non-conformance is, it would impact that order fulfillment cycle time, right? And then there are operational definitions to your right. Reliability, again, the procurement function would affect, procurement activities would impact overall order fulfillment and supply chain reliability. And then there are matters of, and every single procurement professional should be aware of these metrics and understand these metrics, and understand how to calculate these metrics, and understand how the procurement function impacts these metrics. The upside supply chain flexibility, the upside supply chain adaptability, and any one of those of you who need a table to to define these, I could send it to you, but the scope of this webinar, we'll keep it simple. Downside supply chain adaptability and overall value at risk. Again, total cost to serve, yes, critical strategic measure. Cash to cash cycle time, return on supply chain fixed assets, and return on working capital. So all of these key strategic supply chain metrics, the supply chain, the procurement function does impact these metrics. and to be able to calculate and to determine the cause and effect relationships of supply chain activities relative to these strategic measures. It's a very, very, very important exercise. Here is this cost reduction at the sourcing level. So remember the key score dimensions or processes. You have the plan, source, make, deliver, and return and enable. So in the source processes, here we have source 1, source 2, source 3. Whether you're sourcing for stock product methodology, right? Or a make to order methodology, or you're sourcing for an engineer to order methodology. They have different and unique processes, and to make sure that these processes are efficient, to ensure that these processes are not constrained, and to make sure that these processes deliver each one of these steps. For example, if it's a source to make to order, then your product delivery schedule, your input or product delivery schedules are correct. Your receiving mechanisms are correct. You could have breakdowns right there where products are not received properly, they're not proper verifications from terms of quantity and quality, etc. An effective transfer from the receiving site to the storage site, and then from the transfer from the storage mechanisms or the storage grids to the production sites, to make sure that there's no damage or lost product in those transfers. I used to manage warehouse operations as well as managing procurement functions, so I know how you get products in at the dock, and by the time they get to what do you call it, to the manufacturing process, they're not in compliance with it could be food safety or whatever it is, that they're not in compliance. So to ensure that those processes are important, and then to authorize supplier payment. If we're slow in paying our suppliers, eventually it's going to impact our cost. So suppliers are not going to take late and slow payment or non-payment without some type of impact to us. So to make sure that these processes, and then we audit each one of these processes or sub-processes and make sure that they're functioning well, and looking for cost reduction here at the sourcing level. Okay, and then cost reduction or cause and effect relationships, as I mentioned before, to leverage executive dashboards for cost reduction. This is from competency number 7 from the Supply Executive Leadership course, which we're going to launch soon, SPSM4. This is one of the dashboards that you would get the toolkit to be able to populate. To have an executive visibility of this nature is very, very important. Again, this is built on, designed on the balanced scorecard, but to look at cause and effect relationships, to do that level of analysis of all of these critical parameters here in this dashboard. And again, this also accounts for competitors and how competitors are performing relative to certain dimensions. Very important to have this one-page document, and you're looking at for cost and effect relationships. A very, very strategic way to leverage cost reduction, because you're looking at cost reduction relative to the whole, right? So this is at the enterprise level, and then to again apply cause and effect relationships and leverage operational dashboards for cost reduction. So here, this is for a procurement department in particular, again, based on the balanced scorecard methodology, where you look at the employee focus, you look at the process and quality focus, you look at customer focus, and you look at the financial focus. So in this particular dashboard, we have the employee metrics, right? And this is savings per buyer, savings by procurement team, what you call the purchase order takt time. That's another complicated measure that we could discuss at another time. But the rate at which what do you call it, purchase orders flow through a process. And then you look at separations, tardiness, call outs, and then you look at the process capabilities themselves. Remember, we went through prior the sourcing, the different processes. We were able to measure the capability of those processes to deliver what they're supposed to deliver. And then we look at our internal customer experience. Our internal customers would be, for the procurement function, would be, of course, the manufacturing process where they're our customer, right? So we have this mindset where we look at our internal customers, how well are we serving them? Another internal customer for the procurement function would be the research and development department. Another one would be the finance. That are we getting our POs and our invoices over there on time for payment? You know, so how well are we servicing our internal customers? And then these three categories: employees, employee capability, employee performance, etc., employee happiness, process capabilities, the happiness of our internal customers. How do these impact the financials, right? So, and again, to look at cause and effect relationships. For example, on this dashboard, you see you have the week that you had 0 separations. Nobody left the organization for whatever reason. If you look at the financials and the savings, it went up. So, right there, you saw a cause and effect relationship. So to understand your procurement function for cause and effect, what do you call it, relationships, very, 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 very important. So that is today's webinar for most part. A couple of things I want to touch on is the PASS program. This was one of the areas, people, right? On the dashboard that we started up front, we were looking at different segments: people, process, product, etc. Our PASS program is the Purchasing Assessment of Skills for Success. It's an NLPA's PASS program, in which if you are a procurement function leader and you want to improve the cost reduction and the procurement capabilities of your procurement group, your buyers, then you could have them do an assessment on 9 critical areas of procurement. It's based on 63 multiple choice questions, and you'll get 3 reports that also benchmarks against your department's performance relative to industry statistics. You'll get 3 very nice reports, and then you would have also a report or proposal or recommendation on areas for improvement and areas where and how we could move forward in improving the skill sets of your procurement team to realize cost reduction. So again, the people side of it, making sure that the people have the right skills to execute the cost reduction methodologies is very, very important and cannot be understated. And I leave you all with this caveat. I usually like to leave some caveats. This is part of the level 4 course, supply executive leadership course, and it focuses on 9 dimensions for transformation of your procurement operations. Dimension 1 is articulating a shared vision for your procurement function. Where and how do you want to see your procurement function operating? At what degree of sophistication and effectiveness? What's your vision going forward? And then dimension 2, you would improve your processes, your technology, your machines, everything in your scope to deliver on that articulated vision. And then you make sure that you have the right people on board. That's dimension 3. And dimension 4, where you would leverage the pass program and cross training. It would help if you strategically, if you would have some cross training of your procurement team, maybe into the logistics processes, and have them spend some time being cross trained in the manufacturing processes, and vice versa. This could lead to greater synergies and understanding of cause and effect relationships, and how the procurement function and supply chain function impacts other functions. And of course, once you ensure that the right people have the right skills and they're aligned to the strategic vision, that you build a culture of respect, appreciation, and effective compensation. You make sure those people are effectively compensated. If you have robust cost reduction, use some of these strategies that we recommend, you would realize huge cost reduction, and then you share in that savings. Then you make sure that your procurement function, you have ergonomic and efficient workspaces, the visual controls, and there's a methodology that you call 5S, 5S for office. You might want to research that, 5S for office, and look at your current layout in your procurement department and see where you could apply 5S. I'll give you all an assignment. And then you make sure that you have the right, what you call the right metrics, and their balance, like what we just went through, the balance scorecard at different levels, and then ensure accountability for the procurement function mandates. And then, of course, effectively manage risk and unintended consequences. So it's based on 9 dimensions, and the key underpinnings are customer requirements. This is all driven by customer requirements. That's the start point. So understanding and knowing the customer requirements, deploying the 9 dimensions, and have them anchored by a culture of change, innovation, and collaboration with systems thinking. You don't look at the procurement function in a bubble. This whole webinar was underpinned by systems thinking. The total cost to serve matrix is looking at things in a whole. The quality function deployment, again, looking at things in relative to many dimensions. So it's a systems thinking. And that is today's webinar. I hope that you all found it to be a good use of your time, and I hope that I was able to deliver something of use and in a robust way, and it would help you all in your day-to-day activities. I'm going to stay online for some open it up for some Q&A, and I'm going to stay after the Q&A. I'm going to stay a little bit for anyone who has questions. For anyone who has any questions on what was covered. If you have any questions, if you could send your notes in the chat box, I'll deeply appreciate it. Oh, you're very much, you're very welcome. Katini, you're very, very welcome. Just a thank you. You're welcome, Robert. Oh yes, all material. Yes, we do. Yeah, that's the whole idea. To provide you with material. The slide, what do you call it? The slides. We always give the slides, so this way you all could use it as points of reference. And also too, many of you have my contact information, so feel free to contact me with questions, even on deployment, because whatever I teach from things that I've done on the field. So I understand the theory. I had to learn the theory, but this is all applied theory. So whatever I put something on there. 90% of the times it would be things and mechanisms that have been deployed, right? The quality function deployment, even this 9 dimensions of change management and transformation, all these things I've utilized in the field. So if you all need any type of coaching or mentoring, this is why we're here. And I'm very passionate about seeing others succeed. So yeah, feel free to reach out to me and say, look, Dave, I want to apply so and so to my space. I need some tips. Yeah, feel free. Okay. This is why we're here. This is one of the unique things about NLPA, and we're not gonna charge you all for that. Okay, so feel free to reach out to me. Okay, so this way you all take this and then you all go and use it. Okay. Again, the level 4 is going to be completed soon. The leadership course, it's going to be launched very, very, very soon. A lot of this material was based on from that course. I hope that you all like it and find it helpful. Please, I see a question there, and please, how can this be helpful to public procurement? Okay, so every single tool that we went through here could be applied across industry, including healthcare, including the government processes, the service sector. Some of it will require some degree of translation into from a manufacturing or to a service, what do you call it, environment. Some of the metrics you might have to modify slightly. For example, total cost to serve. That was a big thing today, right? That could be applied across industry. If you're in the service, you're serving people, right? This could be, what does it cost to serve a customer? If you're in the private sector, in retail. If you're in government, what does it cost to serve someone in the public in a particular government institution? What does it cost? What's the cost to serve? So this could be applied there as well. Some of the dynamics, some of the buckets or strategic buckets, you may have to collapse, or you may have to put in particular dynamics or measures that are unique to your situation. But the whole methodology and the idea would remain the same. So yes, this could be applied. So you would have to do some, to answer that question, you would have to do some translation, and there's certain things that are just not compatible from one industry to the next. But most of it, the mass majority of whatever we went over today is applicable across industry. The downtime, the waste, the hidden factory. Well, you have the hidden service center, and you have the hidden service center in government, in all government sectors across the globe, right? The excessive delays and redundancies, and takes forever to do stuff. Why? Why is the fundamental question? Because of the hidden, what do you call it? The hidden service sector, whatever you want to call it in government space. So for example, let's take a government process, for example, there is transportation. There is transportation of documents. There is motion of people back and forth. There are inventories of documents, files. There are defects, right? Every time government employee, and I'm not knocking the government sector, but I mean, you have defects everywhere. But every time we we use the wrong inputs, you're going to have some type of mistake or some type of error or misinformation, whatever. That's a defect, right? And in some sectors, the government sector, we touch things so many times, so many signatures we need, over processing, right? So this does apply across industry. You go into the healthcare, what's the defect in healthcare? If I have to wait an excessive amount of time to get my treatment, that's a defect. If you misdiagnose me, that's a defect. If you give me the wrong medication, that's a defect. If you operate on the wrong arm or leg, that's a defect. And you could go on and on and on. As a matter of fact, the United States healthcare system has close to $1 trillion. Yes, close to $1 trillion